Hi, everyone. We're so glad to have you join us today. We are going to be talking about navigating tax and immigration insights from an immigration attorney and a tax advisor. I am so excited to have Cindy Sun here today with Rubio and Son, a tax and bookkeeping. And we're going to go through, well, I'm going to have her explain a lot from the tax advisor perspective, but I'm going to chime in on the importance of how it impacts immigration and sort of this just overlap between the two areas because it's really important. So we'll go ahead and proceed to the next slide. A lot of you know a lot about me. I'm Ruby Powers, board certified immigration attorney, started Powers Law Group in 2009 and focus a lot on advocacy, law practice management, and just helping my clients as much as possible. So that's why we started this series, to be able to provide information that, even though it might not exactly be immigration related, it still can be helpful and impact you in your immigration journey. And so next we have Cindy Sun, and we met through the National Association of Women Business Owners and Goldman Sachs 10,000 Businesses as well. And we are both alumni of that program. And so I'll go ahead and let her give her a little bit more of an intro, but excited to have her here today with me on this webinar.
Yes, thank you so much, Ruby. I appreciate this. And it's great that we both share that great passion to help our clients. You know, obviously you in the legal side and I in the accounting side. And yes, I have more than 15 years of experience in tax preparation, bookkeeping, and just financial advisory overall for individuals and small businesses. I do specialize in the bookkeeping for businesses in real estate and construction. After accounting, my second passion is real estate. But just in general, anything that has to do with taxes and saving for their clients, obviously, that's what I work so hard for. You know, I believe we have to pay the IRS, but let's not give them a tip. So not even a penny more. So just overall, we're very excited, our team, to just help out our clients. We have a lot of Spanish speaking clients. All of our team is bilingual. So it's something that we can definitely help and offer to our clients.
And that's a good point.
Yes.
We're going to do this program in Spanish as well. So this is for those in English, and that we just wanted to make sure that we can reach a large audience.
Correct. All right. So we can start. Something, obviously, the whole theme is about ITIN. So we want to dive in and talk a little bit more about what it is and the process of obtaining it and why having one. So to start, what is an ITIN? So it stands for an individual taxpayer identification number. For individuals who do not have or are unable to obtain a Social Security number, you obtain an ITIN number for tax reporting purposes for the IRS. So if there's any income that you obtain, U.S. income, then you need to file a tax return. And if you don't have a Social Security number, then you would need an ITIN number. Okay, so it's in general tax obligations and for you to be in compliance with U.S. tax laws. All right, so reasons why an individual would need an ITIN. So this would be residents, individuals that are residing in the United States, also non-residents, individuals that are not living in the United States, but are obtaining some type of income from the United States. For example, there are partnerships that can be established and the partners can be in another country, but they are investing in the US, so they would need an ITIN number because they wouldn't be able to obtain a Social Security number, for example. And so also, when there's dependents as well, or spouses of U.S. citizens or residents that also are not eligible to obtain a Social Security number, they can obtain an ITIN number, and there's certain credits or exemptions or statuses that would allow them to save in taxes. So also, for example, individuals that want to buy real estate here and they would have to file a U.S. tax return for that rental income that they're obtaining. So they would also, those are another reason to obtain an ITIN number so they can file their tax return. All right. So you can say, what is the process and requirement? So the number one requirement is that you're not eligible for a social security number. So definitely, there's been individuals that are in the process, if and this would be something that you could chime in if if you can or like to. I've had clients that they are already in the process of obtaining a social security number. So if it's a very close span of time that they're going to obtain that, then they shouldn't be applying for ITIN number because they're going to have their social security number. So it just would depend. It's a case by case, obviously, depending on how soon that they would.
And
Mhm.
that's a really good point. I have some clients that I met that they were about to file for the tax ID number, but then they were eligible for a green card and work authorization. And I was like, wait, just hold off, because if we file for the green card, we're gonna have this work social issue to you before you know it. And a lot of the processing times have sped up. And so I just thought it was more prudent. And so that's good that you backed me up on that as well. So
Yes, exactly. No, it's true. Now, but of course, case by case, if they are oh, well, no, never mind. I was gonna say if they were going to pay, then they should make a payment, but they really can't because there is no number that would identify them. So maybe it would be just a heads up. There could be a filing, a late filing fee or interest. But again, that's just a heads up to the client in case. Again, everything is case by case. All right,
and
so yes.
and getting the work authorization social it might be under 11 weeks at this moment, which is sort of probably crazy to hear,
Wonderful.
but yeah, so that's another thing to consider. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Um, so what the process would be is that the individual would complete, it is an IRS form W-7, and it's an application for an ITIN. And something very important is that a tax return has to be filed with this application. Now, the documents that are required with this application will be a valid passport, or there is other documents, for example, a birth certificate, a military ID. What they want to know is the residency to make sure that they are living here in the U.S. For those that are claiming that it is as a U.S. resident that they are actually filing for this W-7. And just to be clear, a U.S. resident for tax purposes is different from a U.S. resident for immigration purposes. So based on the days that you are here in the U.S., you can be considered a U.S. resident for tax purposes, okay? Now, the same for dependents. Now, for dependents, depending on the age, if they are over 6 years old, the dependents, then they can show school records, they can show medical records. Also under 6, they can show medical records, but obviously they can't show school records, but they will need some type of proof that the children are here in the United States. They have to be living here to be a dependent and obtain this ITIN number. Now there's also
And that,
agents
and
and
that,
yes.
can I ask a quick, that used to be an issue, right? Because a lot of people were claiming a whole bunch of kids. And then I think I heard some joke or some the truth that one year when they required them to have socials or something, like a whole bunch of kids disappeared because they really didn't exist or something like that.
Correct. Yes. So as of 2018, the children have to be present here in the US so that they can be considered as a dependent.
Okay.
Previously to that, it wasn't. They could be in Mexico or Canada and they can still be considered as a dependent. But as of 2018, that changed. So yes, it makes sense. all of a sudden, they're no longer dependent, but because of that reason, they're the residency here. So whenever individuals apply for this ITIN number, they can send the tax return, send the W-7 and the supporting documents, or they can obtain services from a CAA or a certified acceptance agency. And our firm is a certified acceptance agency so that the client doesn't have to mail out their passport. Sometimes that's their only identification. So we are able to verify their passports, verify other information or supporting documents that they have so that they don't have to mail it out. So that is an option, and it's something that many clients opt for. Now, in the case that they do send those supporting documents, the IRS will return it to them. It's not that they keep it. Some individuals, though, have had cases where it was lost in the process. So that's why some individuals prefer the CAA services. But at the same time, it's not all the time. Unfortunately, there's things that no one can control. But just in general, the process is 11 weeks. So the IRS normally mails back the documentation, the supporting documents, and then they will receive, if everything's approved, the ITIN, and it's in a letter form with that new number. And that's what they can use. Something I forgot to mention, there's individuals, sometimes to open a bank account, if they start their businesses and they need an EIN number, they're going to need this ITIN as well. So it's very useful for that as well. All right, so we'll shift over to tax filing and immigration status, and I'll have you chime in on that.
And I wanted to ask you a question. If you obtain your tax ID number and you have a business, you should get the EIN. Does it take longer to get an EIN for a business if you have a tax ID number versus a social?
It will. Well, actually, just this week, so previously, I would say at least a month ago, it was a longer process because you had to fax in or submit via mail, postal mail, so that you can get that EIN if you have an ITIN. But just this week, we were able to obtain an EIN for a client that has an ITIN number for their business.
Oh,
so
awesome.
now they did set up now it's available online. Previously, it was only with Social Security numbers, and now it is available online. So thank God that money that was allocated to the IRS is being used, at least for that.
Well, and that's so important because when people are trying to set up a business, like for an E2 example, just that delay, because it's sort of like unlocking the key. You can't make that bank account, the credit card, and all of that. It's without that EIN, and it just gets really messy if you don't have it. So I'm glad to hear that it's getting faster for that process.
Exactly. Yes. All right. So I'll let you talk a little bit about how this impacts immigration.
Yeah, so tax and immigration, like I sort of joke that I really don't want to know about taxes, but I somehow know a lot because of having been immigration attorney for almost 16 years this year. And so there's a lot of different aspects. I generally say immigration likes the taxes for a couple reasons. One, it proves where you were, where you are, where you were, and where you are. So were you here in the US or were you somewhere else? And this can come into play for things like cancellation of removal in immigration court. It can also come into play if you want to petition for somebody and you need to establish that you've been paying into the system and you live mostly in the United States. Especially if you're doing like consular processing. The other aspect is it shows good moral character. So this affects things from like naturalization, for example. You don't necessarily have to show you have a job, but if you don't pay taxes, then that's a bad moral character. And so good moral character is really critical to being eligible. It's one of the components. And if you read the naturalization application, you can see that it has like about 4 or 5 questions about tax. And it's pretty much, have you ever failed to file? Do you owe, some of those types of questions. And so they really care about this. So taxes are important for naturalization. If you ever had failed to file, then just make sure you're on the up and up and you've taken care of it. And even if you do owe money, as long as you can show a payment plan, this won't keep you from being able to obtain naturalization if that's your only issue. And then a third key point in just my little brief overview is that it shows what you're consistent with what your marital status is. So if you're petitioning for a spouse, for example, if you're saying you're married to USCIS and you're not saying that to IRS, then what's going on here, right? And so that's the same thing that happens when like judges have to know how to read taxes, and when they see head of household and they're like, what So what, Cindy, now that I have you right here, what does head of household mean? Because I think a lot of people use it erroneously to get more benefits, but I don't think it's the actual
Correct.
classification.
Yeah. No, the main thing is that it's an unmarried individual. With
Mm,
that, I tell you everything. You know, now if let's say they're now unmarried because they're widowed, they were married, or now they're divorced, they still would qualify. But the most important is that they are an unmarried individual and they provide more than 50% support for their children. And I completely agree with you with that. Um, I've had to have conversations with my clients and saying, because something that the IRS is doing every single year, there are being requiring or meaning auditing more,
uh,
especially head of household is a huge red flag. And what's happening too is that the IRS is also communicating with the states with verifying that who is receiving the, let's say, benefits for food stamps, benefits for Medicaid. And so they will come back and say, I need proof that you are the only, and the proofs would be, I mean, we can go in all day and talk about this proofs, but, just in general, the contracts at their apartment, then who's this other individual that's listed here, and
yeah.
so, oh, what a coincidence that this individual is the one who's receiving benefits for the children, so the IRS is becoming stricter about those things that in the past it was honestly just going through. But definitely that is a huge red flag and something that is audited much more nowadays.
Right. And so as we mentioned, proving where you were or when you were there, like that could help you when people were applying for DACA for the originally and having to prove where they were. That helped with cancellation of removal, showing the 10 years of residency, or even for registry or some other terms about being able to, because it's almost like a date stamp of a government document. And now it's so easy to get those transcripts, and so it's just like it's great evidence. And then that other component about good moral character, well, they all love good moral character. You're paying into the system. This is how things work. And then third about proving your marital status, and also not just marital, but also children. Like which children, who are these people you listed live in your house or that you're taking care of, and who are these, like, and what's their, sometimes I've seen situations where looking at that closely opened up a whole nother can of worms, sort of like what you're saying, because they're like, why are you listing these people? What is that? What's your dynamic there? And
Right.
so there is a lot of overlap between immigration and tax, and these are just sort of like the tip of the iceberg. When I see people put head of household when there shouldn't, I say, please go talk to a professional about this because I know that you can amend it.
Right.
How many years can you go back for amendment?
I mean, you can go back to amend that's okay. It's just that if you're due a refund, then you
Uh-huh.
only have 3 years to obtain the refund. But
Okay.
whenever you owe, you still are going to owe and you're going to pay penalties and interest on top of that.
I
So
So
yes,
you can only benefit if it's your mistake, I guess, in amending in the last 3 years, but if you owe for forever, like
and
they'll,
forever. Yes.
okay.
That's
I
the
see how that
IRS
works.
for you.
Yeah, yeah,
But
okay.
if the IRS does owe you a penny, I've
Uh,
seen a check for a penny before. So
I've seen a check for a few cents or something, and I'm like, seriously, yeah.
yes.
Um, and so the place where I see this be an issue is when, and this makes me cringe because I'm like, no, because I don't know how long it's going to go take. Actually, that's probably another question to ask you is like, how long does it take to amend? But it's when a person has head of household when they really should have had, oh, you're sharing screen. Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
sorry. I was about to check.
yeah. When you have head of household, when you really should have said married. And that's something that I was probably the most common thing that I see people mess up. Either that or not having filed. But a lot of people have filed, but a lot of them, I think they think like either I wear the pants in the family, so I'm head of household or something. I'm not really sure. Or some person is giving them advice. Well, if you say head of household, you're going to get a lot more money. And I'm all like,
Exactly.
ah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And and unfortunately too, it's also that, which is both. One, they want more money and that's all they think about, right? And also the tax preparer, some, not all, but
Mhm.
some fail to tell them this is the consequence for that. And or even stand firm and no, you do not qualify for head of household, so we're not following you as head of household. This is just another is a story, but I had a client, she had just obtained her residency, and so she got her social. It was exciting, it was great, and all of a sudden she comes and she's like, well, I have this niece and her daughter, and so I want to add them as dependents. And so I'm like, did they live with you? Did you, also support them more than 50% of all their support? Did you pay that? No, she actually lives somewhere else. I'm like, they are not your dependents. And I said, you have a great, benefit. You're now a US resident. Do you want to get have a red flag on your file, and go through all of this? Like, is not worth it. So I said, I will not file your tax return with with those dependents. So I ended up not filing at all. She moved on, and we didn't
Yeah.
provide her services, and it's sad and unfortunate. But I also told my clients, I signed the tax returns with you. So in case of an audit, we can be penalized as well. So it's not just about you. Yes, the you are going to pay the difference if you are penalized from the IRS about it, but I also could pay a fee, a penalty for doing something like that. So yes, but that's not the case for everybody, obviously.
Right. And I think that's a good point is, as we move on here, is like you need to choose someone that knows what they're doing, has the professional education and licensing requirements to do this job. And there is a range of sort of like ethical interpretations or and how professionals move forward. And like it can be quick and easy to give you, find a way to get you the biggest tax return. But if it's going to later cause you to owe a lot of penalties and a lot of return money back because you have to clean up your taxes for your
Exactly.
immigration status or what have you, like that, it's not worth it. It's not worth
Yeah,
it.
correct, correct. And
So
just,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
what I was gonna say about the amending the tax return,
Oh yeah.
I was gonna look that up just because it does change. It differs, depending on how the IRS is setting up. But in general, it's 8 to 11 weeks. But there, during tax season and even previously to that, it had been 14 to 18 weeks.
Mm,
So it can be a lengthy process. Now, before, as of 2 years ago, everything had to be sent in, mailed in to do an amendment, but now it can be done electronically. So, and usually through tax professionals, if you go online to TurboTax and those, I'm not sure, maybe they do have an option for amending electronically, but definitely I know through tax professionals, through the systems that we use, we can do that as well.
well, that's good to know. I love that they're getting up to speed on electronic filing and
Oh,
the
yes, I
digital age.
agree.
Yeah, it'll make everything a lot faster. Yeah. Well, yeah. We can move on to the next slide then.
All right. Let's see. So yeah, so this one, the importance of maintaining accurate tax records. I have a lot of individuals that get paid with cash. So some of the ways of having proof of income is what's deposited into the bank accounts. Also a letter from the employer or the main contractor. I have a lot of clients that are subcontractors, so a letter from the contractor stating how much it was that they paid. So and just in general, that for example bank statements or any other types of bills and things like that, those are proof of residency. Just having here, the importance of maintaining that, and just in general with, I guess you already talked about this obviously, but that credibility, trustworthiness that obviously the immigration wants to see. I even tell my clients, oh, I totally forgot that gentleman that he was part of the mafia in New York, but he was, oh my gosh, I totally forgot his name at this moment. But I tell them they weren't able to, get him for, let's say, mafia or thing like that, but it was honestly because of tax evasion. He didn't file his tax returns, So I know we'll talk a little bit later. We talk about, certain misconceptions that individuals have, but, again, that is huge. I tell clients as well, I understand that, some individuals don't want to file taxes or they don't want to pay, but I do tell them, we all pitch in for federal taxes, in case of any type of emergency. They're not going to ask, oh, what is your legal status here? Are you, documented or not? What they're going to do is help you. And so we all have to pitch in for that, and so that's part of it, like what you said, and what immigration, looks at, that good moral character, right? If you're going to become a resident and then U.S. citizen, then part of that, is that we all are going to follow the law, which is our tax obligations. So
I think I know what you're talking about. Like they couldn't get a mobster on the RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, but they were able to via taxes or something like that.
yes, and this was Al Capone. Al Capone.
Al Capone, okay. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
they really do reflect a lot about your life. I was just looking at my filing yesterday in like detail, and it was like, it's got a lot about businesses and children and your investments and stuff. So there's a lot of information there. Um well, yeah, I think that good moral character and credibility is also like a big theme throughout it all.
Yes. All right. So just like I started, to mention, yes, those misconceptions, oh, I don't have to file. I make, I don't make enough money, if you are self-employed with, as long, the minimum is $600, because as a self-employed individual, you have to pay self-employment tax. And so $600 is the minimum that you have to file. Now, for individuals that have a W-2, then it's, for this year, is 13,850. If you make anything greater than that amount, then you need to file your tax return. So now other individuals say, I owe too much in taxes. I also tell my clients, it's not that it's a set amount. It's always going to be a percentage of what you make. If you're a subcontractor, it's based on the profit, so, definitely the IRS, depending on what type of business you have, there's certain expenses that are allowed, and that's going to reduce the amount of profit that you have. So it reduces the amount of taxes. So it's just about, being informed and also having the right prepared to guide you. Now, some people, like I mentioned, only for employees, oh, well, I don't get a W-2. That's only for employees. No, well, you're a subcontractor. Even, and the next one, Zelle is like cash. There's some clients like, oh no, I don't make any money, or this, or I just received through Zelle. Zelle is not cash. Zelle can be traced. You need to report everything. In case of an audit for small business owners, in case of an audit, the first thing that the IRS asks for is for bank statements, either personal and business. Okay, so the business bank accounts, there's some clients that say, oh, I'm going to hide some money and deposit into my personal and not into the business. The first thing the IRS is going to ask is for all bank statements. So,
Is there
that
some type of misconception or a change that happened where people think, even like tax preparers, that Zelle is like cash and not like it doesn't require a 1099 or
yeah. So Zelle and doesn't send out a 1099-K. So there's been certain amounts that I want to say it was $20,000 that any individual that was through merchant services obtain credit card payments from clients, then a 1099-K, or even selling through eBay or other of those platforms, then they wouldn't send a 1099-K to you. So they lowered that minimum, but it still did not. It was supposed to go into effect this 2023, well, 2024 for the 2023 year, but it didn't. So now it has been pushed to 2025. But Zelle won't send those 1099-Ks because they are not actual merchant services. It's not an actual company that is processing credit cards. So it could be for some odd reason that they're thinking that it's not, but it's still income. I mean, even if if you receive cash, you're supposed to report that cash, so, it's just individuals saying, well, the IRS is not going to track this, or there's no way, but, that everything has to be reported for the IRS. So, another misconception too is, just tax benefits or tax credits, mostly families that, if both husband and wife have an ITIN, but they have children that are born here, they can still qualify for the child tax credit. They won't qualify for the earned income credit, but that child tax credit can still help them to lower their tax bill. So it's still beneficial. They're going to be compliant, and and it's not a large amount, of taxes that they're paying, depending on their on their income, obviously. But just in general, that's the importance of being informed. And again, everything is case by case, depending on everyone's situation. All right. So now, obviously, some individuals that are eligible to obtain a social security number. So there's benefits with that. Part of it, that there's eligibility for social security benefits. And you also would stop filing your tax return with an ITIN number. You would now file with a social security number. With a social security number, like I mentioned, you are eligible to obtain an earned income credit depending on your income. So it would also depend, but there is a possibility for you to be eligible for that. So that is also a great benefit. Now, that income that you file, every year when you have an ITIN number and you're filing that income that you're making, you can then transfer that income to your new social security number. So this is wonderful. And because that those earnings, the Social Security Agency, once you're at the age to retire, they're going to look at your work history, your earnings, and there are certain credits that you have to obtain so that you can be eligible for this. There's retirement benefits, there's disability benefits, there's survivor benefits. So there are certain credits, and all of that is a case by case on age, for disability or survivor benefits. But all this update of income that you've been, earning with your ITIN number can be transferred to your Social Security number, and that's going to be very helpful. I had a great example of this couple that they literally, I would say 15 years, or my client 15 years, they were able to retire 2 years ago. So now they were able to transfer. We guided them through that process and were able to provide those services for them. But and all the earnings of those 15 years allowed them for now to have all the credits that they needed. And they have a very nice income coming in. They're actually from Argentina. Unfortunately, financial situation is not so good for them, but for them, it's really good because they're getting all these, the US dollar benefits, both the husband and wife, and they're retired in their country. Of course, they have family here, and so they come and visit, but it's just a wonderful story of filing all your taxes, being compliant, and then obtaining that great benefit of having a Social Security number, having all that transferred over to the ITIN earnings to the Social Security number, and now they're able to obtain those benefits. Another thing too, just in general, with an ITIN number, individuals can apply for credit, for a vehicle, for credit cards, for a home. So all that is beneficial because, again, they're able to obtain assets with a loan, and it's a possibility that previously it wasn't a bit. I know mortgages is something pretty new, I would say maybe in the last 5 years. So again, it's just very beneficial to file your taxes.
And I think about the Social Security, I think people get really confused by all the benefits. Like you said, there are so many. It's not just retirement. There also could be like disability, and a lot of other ones you could also benefit from if you were married, and your spouse's benefits. And so like there's a lot that it seems a little confusing. But the more you can get this up to par, and can obtain credit for what you've worked, that's why it's important to have a tax ID number, and then try to get a social over time if you haven't already. But you right now, back in the day, they used to give socials out really easily, but now in immigration matters, you can only get it if you have the ability for work authorization. So it's more limited than it was. I'd say somewhere around maybe 2001 and before, somewhere around there. I think it was a lot easier to get a social. I think the other thing people don't know is that if you get a social, like a real one, that's your social for life. And I think the other thing is that if you are using, I think we talked about this, right? I think if you're using a fake social that's not real, and you that's the only way that your work is tied to, then in many cases you're not able to get credit for that. Is that true, or it depends on how it's set up with if it's tied also to your tax ID number?
So yes, so what happens, there are individuals that have a W-2 and that W-2 lists, like you said, a fake social security number. Now that individual, the name is correct, the address is correct, everything is correct the way that it is, except for that number. They can use that W-2 form and file their tax return with the ITIN number, even though the W-2 has a different number. So obviously there was not going to be another individual that's filing that, but they did legitimately make that income and pay those taxes. The Social Security, the Medicare, the federal was all deducted from their taxes. They actually did pay that. So the IRS allows for that tax return to be filed.
Oh, and so in that case, then they could get credit if they later obtain a lawful, valid social
Correct.
security. Okay. Well,
Yes.
and that's another benefit, like we're basically saying, is to pay taxes, and to make that paper trail, because it can come back to benefit you later on with all these different benefits, but also, you're paying into the system and you're supposed to do it. So,
Right.
um,
Exactly. Yes. And, and just additional steps when an individual obtains a social security number, you do want to update the IRS, let them know I will no longer use that ITIN number so it can be deactivated. Because also, like I said, identity theft could happen with an ITIN as well. So you want to definitely contact the IRS. I have a new social security number. This is the new number. Please deactivate, my current ITIN number. With your financial institutions, if you open an account with an ITIN number, if you open, started a loan, obviously with those lenders, you want to, update that information as well. And then just for reference for clients, Form SSA 7008 with the Social Security Administration is the form needed, which is called correction of earnings records, so that all the earnings can be transferred over to the Social Security number.
And I think this is one of the most important things that I wanted to make sure we had this webinar because of that. We're working with a lot of individuals as they're getting closer to their retirement and want to have options, and we're trying to obtain legal permanent residency and later citizenship. And so I'm really glad that you could explain how that works, because many people have been paying into the system, and we want to let them get credit for all their hard work.
Exactly. All right. So some common pitfalls and the compliance issues. I'll have you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you fail to file, that can be a blemish or red flag for naturalization. It can also cause trouble if you're in immigration court for cancellation removal. If you're misreporting income, that's not good moral character. Misreporting the marital status, like we mentioned, who you say is in your household, what you say to your legal status, marital status is to IRS versus USCIS needs to be consistent. You want to keep records. I think that if a person doesn't have status in the country, you should, just as a safety, if you were to get detained and needed to fight immigration court for cancellation of removal or to get a bond, having all your tax returns in one place that you could quickly get to an immigration attorney to help show that good moral character, show that time here in the country, would be advantageous. So I think just like anything, trying to have your documents in order, and get a second or third opinion if necessary. Make sure that, from your tax advisor to your immigration attorney, that it's, they're a professional, they're licensed, they have experience, they can talk to you about cases similar to yours. They sound like they know what they're talking about, not just because your friend's friend goes to this person, but like you've done your research. You feel a good rapport when you talk to them. They have the answers to the questions pretty quickly, unless it's a unique situation, they need to double check that. But for the most part, these are some of the things in that overlap between immigration and taxes, I think, that you should keep in mind.
Very good.
Well, I mean, we have jobs because of this, right? So, I mean,
Exactly.
because, when you try to do some things on your own, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think we filed taxes on our own back when our taxes were simple, and now they're like so complex. Like I was reading, ours was like 87 pages. I don't know, it's crazy. So we're not going to do that on our own. We're going to get a professional, and we don't want to get into trouble for later on finding we forgot to do something. So, just like why I have my profession as well. It's not intuitive. People, if you assume you're going to make mistakes, we're dealing with the federal government, and as much as they're trying to make things a little more efficient and online filing and such, it's still not all the way there. And even if it does, you're still going to need a guidance. So having professional assistance avoids unnecessary mistakes. It can limit the amount of wasted time and unnecessary costs. Sometimes going pro se can actually cost a lot more. I've seen it happen multiple times in my life and also in my clients' lives. And then just that general peace of mind. I think that's a lot of times what people, when they're hire professional advice is assistance, is that they have that peace of mind that a professional who eats, lives, and breathes in that space is
Exactly.
is is
Yes.
is is taking care of that matter.
Yes. Very well.
Well, we covered a lot, Cindy.
We did.
Who would have thought that immigration and tax was so entertaining? I don't know.
Oh, yes. I
Well,
enjoyed
yeah, I thank you so much. I learned a lot and little nuggets here and there, and I'm glad that we're going to have this available to our clients in the community to be able to find out ways to, to just sort of educate themselves, empower them in making the right decisions. And of course, this doesn't take the place of tax advising or immigration advice. Do seek out a professional for your specific matter, but it is some general information that we hope will help guide you, empower you into finding the right answers. And so Cindy can be found at all these different places, from her email in LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and her website, rubioandson.com. And you can reach out to us at Powers Law Group at 713-589-2085, rubypowerslaw.com, and all these other different ways you can reach out. So, any closing thoughts, Cindy?
No, just in general, the biggest thing is it's worth the consultation that you'll pay so that you can have that guidance, that peace of mind. And just in general, there are obligations and we all do our part and things, are beneficial and good for you. So for all of us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we'll go ahead and have this available for those, and, share it with others you think can benefit from it. And we'll also provide it in Spanish later on. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.